The Senate chamber of Zitharon glowed with pride and arrogance. Beneath the vaulted dome of crystal and steel, representatives from hundreds of species filled tiered seats, their jeweled robes shimmering in the artificial light. Murmurs rippled like waves as the Grand Marshal ascended the central podium. Threx Valor stood tall in ornate armor that gleamed like a trophy of conquest. His voice, amplified by the chamber's resonant walls, carried with the confidence of a man certain of his place in history. "The Empire," he declared, spreading his arms wide, "faces no equal in this galaxy. Yet one minor world dares defiance. A blue planet backward and provincial, populated by mammals that barely crawled from caves. They call themselves humans." The hall erupted with laughter. The senators, draped in silks and metals, exchanged amused glances. To them, Earth was an insect nest to be crushed under boot. Threx's gaze hardened. "Their resistance is laughable. Primitive weapons, undisciplined militias, a history of squabbles barely worth noting. Their stubbornness is not strength, it is ignorance. I promise you this, Earth will be subdued before the next cycle's end. Their soldiers will fall like grass before the scythe." The roar of approval shook the chamber. Fists slammed tables, tails lashed the air, mandibles clicked in unison. The declaration of war seemed sealed by sheer arrogance. But then, a sound cut through the applause, a slow, deliberate tapping of a cane. Rovenkel stepped forward from the shadows of the gallery. Scarred, broad-shouldered, draped in the plain uniform of a retired soldier, he walked with a limp that spoke of wounds long healed yet never forgotten. His presence hushed the chamber. Even the most jaded senators recognized him, the veteran of the Valkyrie campaigns, the warrior who had bled on battlefields older than most of them had lived. "Grand Marshal," Roven said, his voice gravelly but steady, "you speak with pride. But pride blinds. And it blinds you now." Threx sneered. "The relic speaks. Tell us, old soldier, will you frighten us with ghost stories?" "I tell you what I saw." Roven's eyes narrowed, scars catching the chamber's light. "Years ago, on a frontier colony, I encountered humans. Not an army. Not a fleet. A detachment, barely 100. They were cut off, surrounded, outnumbered 10-1. By every measure of war, they should have surrendered." He paused, letting silence settle. His words carried weight, and though many smirked, others leaned forward despite themselves. "They did not surrender," Roven continued. "They fought with a ferocity I had never seen. Wounded soldiers dragged comrades behind cover while firing with their free hand. When their ammunition ran dry, they charged with blades. When their blades shattered, they used stones, bare fists, teeth. They fought until not one remained standing. Even as their lungs failed, they crawled to tear at us with bleeding hands." A senator from the insecticure race clicked her mandibles in disbelief. "Savage instinct. Nothing more." Roven's gaze cut to her, sharp as a blade. "Instinct ends when the body collapses. This was more. They did not fight for survival alone. They fought for each other. For something greater than themselves. That, senators, is a strength I have never seen equaled." Laughter rose again, louder this time, fueled by contempt. "Heroic tales," someone shouted. "A dying unit romanticized by age." Threx raised a hand, silencing the room with a smirk. "And what would you have us do, old man? Kneel before savages with clubs? Shall the Empire halt its march because a band of animals clawed at you like vermin?" Roven stepped closer to the podium, leaning on his cane but standing tall. "You mistake them for vermin. They are predators. You think yourselves the hunters, but march upon Earth and you will learn you are the prey." The chamber erupted, outrage and laughter clashing in equal measure. Some senators shouted for his removal. Others mocked him, imitating humans crawling on the floor. Threx leaned forward, his voice dripping with disdain. "You are a coward, Rovenkel. Age has stolen your courage, leaving only fear. The Empire has no room for fear." Roven did not flinch. His voice cut through the chaos, low and cold. "It is not fear that speaks, Grand Marshal. It is memory. And memory warns louder than pride." The vote was called, almost ceremonial. Holographic sigils flared across the chamber as representatives cast their decision. The tally filled the dome, unanimous, save for one abstention. War was declared. Threx raised his arms in victory. So it is decided. The apes will kneel, and their world will burn. The chamber thundered with approval. Senators rose, chanting, drunk on the promise of conquest. Rovan turned away. He moved slowly, each step echoing on the marble floor. No one stopped him. No one listened. His cane struck the ground with finality as he reached the exit. Before the doors closed behind him, he whispered, barely audible, but carried by the stillness of the moment. You have no idea what you've unleashed. The armadas of the Galactic Empire stretched across the void like a steel horizon. Thousands of warships gleamed under starlight, hulls carved with banners of victory. To the Senate, it was a sight that confirmed destiny, the humiliation of a minor world called Earth. In the capital's great docking rings, young recruits clustered in tight ranks. Their armor shone without a scratch, their voices carried laughter as they traded boasts. An easy campaign, one said. We'll be home before the cycle ends. Another smirked. Perhaps I'll keep one of their cities as a trophy. The air was thick with certainty, as though conquest had already been achieved. From the command platform, Grand Marshal Threx addressed them with the confidence of a man crowned in glory. Soldiers of the Empire, today we march to remind a backwater world of its place. You will crush these humans, and history will remember your names as the ones who brought order to chaos. Let no hesitation cloud you. Their defiance ends under your boots. The roar of approval echoed across the hangar decks. Pride filled every voice. Away from the noise, Rovenkel stood in the shadow of a transport craft, watching rows of fresh soldiers board their ships. His eyes lingered on their eager faces, their movements too polished, their confidence untested. A lieutenant approached him, drawn by his presence. You fought in the Valkyrie campaigns, the young officer said. Is it true you faced 10,000 rebels with only 2 regiments? Rovan nodded once. It is true. And I buried most of those 2 regiments. The officer faltered. Then you agree this mission is beneath concern? Humans cannot be worse than the Valkyrie. Rovan leaned close, his scarred face illuminated by the cold lights of the hangar. Do not underestimate them. They will not fight as others do. Respect them, or you will not live to regret it. The officer swallowed hard but forced a smile. With all respect, sir, they are primitives. The Marshal says their technology is outdated. How can they prevail? Rovan's voice dropped to a whisper. Technology is a weapon, but the heart behind it is the true edge of war. Remember that when the battlefield strips away illusions. The officer said nothing, only bowed quickly before retreating to his post. Far from the Senate's pride and the Empire's cheers, Earth's war councils gathered in bunkers deep beneath mountains. Maps glowed with enemy fleet movements, projections spread across continents. Generals spoke in clipped tones, their faces lined with the knowledge of what was coming. They underestimate us, one general said, his hand tracing the orbit of incoming fleets. Good. We will use that. The commander of ground forces, a broad-shouldered veteran named Harrington, rose from his chair. His voice carried the weight of generations. Every soldier here knows our history. Ice ages. Plagues. Civil wars. Atomic fire. We are still here because we adapt, endure, and fight. The enemy believes this is new to us. But survival has always been our way. Across the table, an officer asked, Do we have enough to hold them? Harrington's reply was steady, almost calm. Enough to make them bleed. And that will be enough. In the barracks above, soldiers prepared without speeches or fanfare. They checked weapons, tightened straps, wrote last messages to families. There was no laughter, only a quiet determination that bound them together. The first clash came not on Earth, but on Titan. The icy moon's colonies were small, scattered domes filled with miners and engineers. The Empire's fleet descended with overwhelming force, deploying legions of soldiers across the frozen plain. Threx watched from orbit, smug as reports streamed in. Another province subdued, he murmured. But the reports shifted. Resistance was fiercer than expected. Patrols vanished into the ice fields. Supply convoys were ambushed. Soldiers reported hearing movement in the blizzards, unseen attackers striking from shadows. On the ground, human defenders fought with cunning. They collapsed tunnels to bury armored vehicles. They lured squads into caverns rigged with explosives. Snipers fired from ridges, vanishing before counterfire arrived. When cornered, they detonated themselves to drag enemies down with them. An alien captain transmitted frantically. "They do not retreat! Even when wounded they—" The feed cut was static, leaving only silence. By the time Titan fell, the colony lay in ruins, but the Empire's legions had paid in thousands of lives. Entire platoons were erased for every kilometer gained. From orbit, Threx dismissed the losses with a wave of his hand. Expendable. Victory is all that matters. On Zitharon, Rovin studied the casualty reports. Numbers glowed across his console: dead, missing, destroyed. Too many for a campaign against what the Empire had called primitive. His hand tightened on his cane. He saw the faces of eager recruits he had watched boarding ships only weeks before. Faces now reduced to lists of the fallen. A senator approached him in the hall outside the chamber. "Why do you frown, veteran? Titan is conquered. The apes were crushed." Rovin's reply was flat. "Crushed? Then why did thousands of your sons not return? Why do their soldiers speak of shadows and monsters in the snow? That is not conquest. That is warning." The senator scoffed. "Collateral. They will learn fear." Rovin met his gaze with a stare that pierced deeper than words. "No. They will teach you fear. You just do not see it yet." He turned away, the cane striking the polished floor, echoing like a drumbeat of doom. In the distance, the Empire celebrated its victory. Drums thundered, banners waved, and speeches proclaimed glory. But Rovin heard only silence, the silence before a storm. And in that silence, he whispered to himself the truth no one else would admit. The blood price has only begun. The invasion of Earth began beneath a burning sky. Empire warships descended through the atmosphere, their engines splitting clouds with thunder. Fire rained on cities, jungles, and deserts as troops poured from orbit in waves. To Threx Valor, this was the grand triumph he had promised. But the ground told a different story. Alien soldiers advanced through ruined streets, weapons raised, armor gleaming with imperial sigils. At first, they met little resistance, an empty plaza here, a deserted highway there. Then, from shattered windows and collapsed rooftops, fire erupted. Explosions tore through the air, ripping squads apart. Traps detonated beneath armored carriers. Humans emerged from the smoke in squads of 10, moving like shadows through the rubble. They fired with precision, withdrew before counterfire, and reappeared from another angle. They fought not as a scattered militia but as a predator pack, coordinated, patient, merciless. One alien soldier shouted into his comms, panic breaking through the static. "They don't retreat! They wait for us. Every alley is a kill zone, every building hides them." His voice ended in a scream, then silence. Reports multiplied. Jungle patrols vanished without trace, dragged into the undergrowth. Desert convoys erupted into flame as hidden charges buried in the sand ignited. Night raids left garrisons gutted, soldiers waking to knives and silence. The enemy never stayed still. They adapted, shifting tactics with every clash. On the orbital flagship, Threx slammed a fist into the arm of his chair. "Cowards! They strike and vanish. No discipline, no honor, only vermin's tricks." A nervous officer cleared his throat. "Marshal, with respect, the casualty projections." "Expendable!" Threx barked. "Flood the ground with soldiers. Bombard their cities. I want this world broken." But no amount of fire could halt what was already spreading: fear. In New York's ruins, an alien platoon pushed forward, their commander barking orders. The city lay in rubble, towers split open like broken bones. Smoke curled between steel and glass, hiding movement. Then a whistle cut the air, 3 sharp notes. Human soldiers surged from underground tunnels, their faces streaked with soot, eyes cold and unflinching. Grenades arced overhead. A firestorm swallowed the first ranks. Survivors turned, only to find themselves encircled. Close quarters fighting erupted. Blades flashed. Muzzle flares lit the dark. A human tackled a towering alien twice his size, driving a knife into its throat even as claws tore his side. He kept stabbing until both fell, one dead, one bleeding out but smiling through blood. An alien soldier stumbled back, eyes wide with terror. "They don't fear death," he gasped. "They enjoy it." His words dissolved into silence as a bullet struck his chest. The survivors fled, abandoning their weapons, their discipline broken. They carried with them not the image of victory but of predators hunting them in their nightmares. In the command center, Threx paced furiously as reports stacked higher. "Cowardice spreads through my legions," he shouted. Rovenkel stood near the viewport, watching the flames across Earth's horizon. He did not gloat. His voice was quiet, steady, as if speaking to himself. "It isn't cowardice. It's clarity. They finally see what they face." Threx spun toward him, eyes burning. "You knew this. You sat in the Senate and cursed our cause. Why didn't you stop it?" Roven turned, his scarred face illuminated by the glow of burning cities below. "I tried. You called it fear. Now you stand in the truth you refused to hear." Threx snarled, hand reaching for the hilt of his ceremonial blade. "Enough riddles! Give me solutions!" "There are none," Roven said. "You unleashed a war on a species that does not break. You cannot erase what refuses to die." Alarms blared before Threx could reply. Enemy counteroffensives erupted across every theater. In the jungles of the Amazon, Empire strongholds were overrun. In the Sahara, convoys burned beneath ambushes timed with ruthless precision. In Europe, resistance fighters cut supply lines, strangling Imperial forces. The reports came faster than the officers could speak them. Entire battalions gone. Reinforcements ambushed before reaching the ground. Panic spreading through the ranks. Threx's face twisted in disbelief. "We are the Empire. We cannot lose." Roven's reply was a whisper, yet louder than the alarms. "You already have." The climax came at the Battle of New York. Threx ordered every available division into the ruins, determined to crush the resistance in one decisive blow. Orbital cannons lit the skies, flattening blocks of the city. He swore nothing could survive the firestorm. But when the smoke cleared, the humans were still there. Squads rose from subway tunnels, sewers, collapsed towers, striking with terrifying coordination. They used the wreckage as cover, the streets as traps. An armored column vanished into an intersection rigged with explosives, the ground itself collapsing to swallow tanks whole. Alien soldiers broke ranks, shouting into calms about shadows in the smoke, about enemies who struck even as they bled out. Commanders screamed for order, but fear had taken root. Soldiers threw down weapons, running into streets already lined with waiting rifles. Threx watched from orbit as his proud legions dissolved into chaos. His voice cracked with fury. "Hold the line! Fight, damn you!" But no one listened. The once unbreakable empire fled before a species they had called primitive. On the bridge, Roven turned his gaze toward the marshal. "I told you! They are not prey. They are hunters." Threx lunged at him, blade flashing, but the ship rocked as retreating transports slammed into docking bays, desperate to escape. The marshal fell, crushed under the rush of his own soldiers fleeing the inevitable. His voice died beneath their stampede. Roven stood unmoving, eyes fixed on earth below. Flames spread across continents, but amidst them, he saw lines of humans pulling their wounded, carrying their dead, burying them with solemn hands. Even in victory, they honored their fallen. That truth struck him harder than any battle ever had. He whispered, not to Threx, not to the Senate, but to the galaxy itself. "The apex has revealed itself. And we brought it upon ourselves." The Empire withdrew, humiliated. Across the stars, whispers spread, The humans did not fall. They endured. They adapted. They hunted. And the galaxy would never forget.